Welcome to the Hey Soul Sista podcast, where Mel Histon will guide you through life's big questions and bring you one step closer to doing this crazy journey as best you can.
Hey Soul Sisters, as many of you know, I've been on the journey for a couple of years now of wanting to live a more soulful life. That's part of the reason why I started Hey Soul Sista podcast, is to meet interesting people, learn more about how we can live that more joyful, soulful life from people who know a bit more about it than I do. And so today on Hey Soul Sista, I have an amazing woman. She's such an inspiration to me and to many people, women and men, people around the world, actually. It's Miss Cathy Burke. Hey, Cathy, how you going?
Hey, Mel. Good to be here.
You've been on Hey Soul Sista once before a couple of years ago, and it's great to have you back again. And I wanted Cathy to come on Hey Soul Sista again because I did a retreat with her last November, and for me, it was such a game changer, a life changer. It really made me look at life totally differently and where I'm at in life. And I really wanted, Cathy, for you to come on and maybe share a little bit of some of the learnings that we had from there, and also learn a little bit about you, because again, I see you and you've done such great work in the world. You really have, through the Hunger Project. And I see you now doing your mentoring and coaching, and holding retreats and running women's circles, and you touch everybody in such a beautiful way. And again, you inspire so many of us to really stop and consider how we can do things more joyfully and more soulfully. Yeah. So, Kat, you are. I love you, and I know so many people that are part of your community just adore you because you are so giving, and you share your wisdom with us so openly, which is just wonderful. Now, I've just told you all about Cathy and why I love her, but Cathy, you know, one of the things that I really value is people who are doing really good work in the world, who are changing lives. And you were the CEO, global CEO for the Hunger Project for 20 years. Tell us a little bit about that for those of you who don't really know your journey.
I was actually the CEO for the Hunger Project in Australia, Mel, not the global CEO, but then global vice president. My journey, my career ended up being so huge, but it came from such an unlikely beginning. And I think this is one of the things that I love to encourage all of us about, is that very few of us are sort of born into sort of these like wild, amazing lives. And often we look at people and just judge ourselves against them. But even if you look at someone like Mahatma Gandhi, who was made such a huge impact, he was he was so average for so long, and yet what called him into his full potential wasn't something that was already innate in him. It was the way he engaged with injustice that he saw in the world grew him to become the leader that he became. And that's really my story. I was like super average, and and to be fair, sort of still am.
Not at all.
Just in terms of like an ordinary, fairly daggy kind of just regular person, growing up in Perth, and just nothing about me said anything particular. There's no hints. But when I had my first child and started to allow myself to really feel what it must feel like for other women to give birth to babies that will die of hunger and really preventable things like diarrhea and even the common cold, it was my sort of, I started to get activated more in the world and ended up in Ethiopia in 1992 as a young mum. And it wasn't long after the whole famine, Live Aid situation, and even though the famine acuteness had gone, that sort of chronic, persistent hunger had set in. And in being there, it's just pierced my soul. And even though I wasn't equipped and I hadn't done an MBA in international politics or all of these things that we think we need to have to be able to make a difference, I just stepped up. And as that African proverb goes, I build the road and the road builds me. I just kept taking steps to make a difference, and the steps that I took shaped me into the leader I became. And I look at you too, Mel, and I really feel that's been true for you. You stepped into your own with the situation for women facing violence in their personal sphere, and you just did something about it, even though, you know, you didn't have all the qualifications or whatever. And that grew you into who you became as well. So I do believe that all of us, and I particularly learnt this from women in villages, that we're not just our conditioning, and we can overcome our conditioning. We can overcome our life story. We can overcome what people say about us or what we say about ourselves to forge a much bigger, much more soulful life. So that's what I try to do.
It's interesting. I hear when I went to Nepal, and that was the catalyst for me starting Got You Back Sister. It was going overseas to Nepal, volunteering over there, and hearing the stories of girls and women who had been trafficked and the horrendous abuse that they had experienced. And it's interesting because you go, my thing is, how do I ever go back to my life and forget about all those people that I had met, the women that I had met, and not do something about it, and not do something good in the world after seeing and going, I live such a good life. I live a blessed life in Australia. Yeah. So was there a pivotal moment that you recall that you consciously started to think about your soul and living soulfully? Was it that moment in Ethiopia that you recognised that?
It was beforehand, actually, and I think that soul keeps iterating. So firstly, I was raised a Catholic, and then to sort of rebelled against that, and I'm still not a Catholic to this day, but so there's already a lot of talk about soul, Mel, so it's just been like, no way, and just turned my back on that, and found and discovered punk music, which just, that pierced my soul. That was like the first sort of soul kind of awakening in a really weird way, because it was just so free, and so, for me at least, I just loved it. It cracked something open in me, and I still love it. So I had turned my back on it, but actually life kept interfering with me, and so I was I got really involved in Greens politics in my early 20s, and I ran an election campaign for a senator, helped set up the Greens party, and all of that was super fringy, and people thought that was really weird. And in that time I learned how to meditate, so I did learn transcendental meditation when I was about 23. And that was and I meditate to this day, so I have a daily meditation practice still. So that was like there's just been lots of pieces along the road of living sort of a more soulful life. And I think one of the key distinctions for me, Mel, and that I feel that women find very useful is there's an idea in psychology, and a lot of people write about it, called the 2 stages of life. And so we tend to spend the first stage of our life about responding to what does the world want from me. So it wants me to get partnered up and to have children and to get a good career, and then I've got to buy a house, and I've got to be a good person, and I've got to. So we respond to what society expects from us, what my family expects from me, what I was conditioned to be, and we have to engage with some of that. You know, we need to learn how to look after ourselves financially and how to relate to other people. If we don't, but soon the second stage of life comes a knocking, and it can come earlier for some people, and that's when everything that I achieved and that I'm doing and that's expected of me and I'm really good at isn't satisfying anymore. And we start to think, what's wrong? And Martha Graham, the iconic choreographer, called it divine dissatisfaction. So there's this sort of, And that happened to me. So I was like, God, I've got the husband, got the kid, got but is this it? And for me, it hit in my late 20s. It was like, really, is this it? I'm just going to be successful, consume and die, which sounds pretty bleak about it. But that was the second part of life. So the first part of life, you're answering the question, what does the world want from me, expect from me? How do I engage with that? And we answer that question. But sooner or later, the second stage demands to be answered. And that stage of life asks a different question, is asking, what does my soul want from me? What is my soul asking of me? What is my soul demanding of me? And it's a very different answer to answering the question, what does the world want from me? And we can then spend the rest of our life, and I'm still answering that question, what is my soul?
I was about to ask you, what is your soul calling to you?
It's less about the doing, Mel. And for this question around soul, I've been engaged with now for decades. But for me right now, where I am in my life, I feel very much in sync with living the answer to my soul's question. So I'm even leaving the Hunger Project, actually, I hadn't realised it at the time, but it was also answering this question around soul. So even though I was making a difference and was making a huge global impact that I could, absolutely justify and knew, soul is less interested in your external validation. Soul is eternal, it's messy, it comes at you in different ways. And I realized that there was a part of, for me, my soul wanted something else for me, and it was around sort of teaching and sharing and contributing in a different way. And I'd just written a book that had been partly about that, Unlikely Leaders, and something for me really shifted from there, and that was part of a sort of a soul's thing. And so I'm doing it now, and it's so strange because when I left to sort of embark on this part of my soul's journey, so many people would contact me and say, you've left the Hunger Project, like, oh my God, you make so much difference there. And one woman even said to me, what, you're going to be like a consultant? Like I said something like I was going to be, I don't know, a clown. And so judgy as well. And I just thought, I know that the impact I make isn't quantifiably anywhere commensurate with what I was doing. But it's expressing some deeper part of myself, Mel, that is just, I feel so much alignment and like joy and expression in teaching, sharing, guiding, creating a space for women to have that courage and that sort of like breadcrumbs along the way to also follow what your soul is asking you to do.
When I was on your retreat last November, and it's so interesting because I felt really called to number one, to do your retreat, to sign up for that. And it's interesting, over the last 9 or 10 years, birthing Got You Back Sister, I hadn't realized how caught up in the doing that I was doing. And I remember the first day of the retreat, I think I cried nearly all day because you started having these conversations with us around what it is that the world has wanted us to be. And that was so profound for me to actually sit there and reflect over my life and see where I have sought love and validation from making sure that I achieve. And I could see this pattern all my life when I was in high school and then university, and then in my 20s and 30s. It was about having a career. It was about striving. It was about achieving. And that was, and again, this isn't a whole big go into therapy session about, having my parents influence or what have you. But, I was very much encouraged to be an achiever, and I'm the eldest child. So that was a real thing. And it's interesting, now I'm in my 40s, how exhausting that has been. How exhausting being the good girl, being the pleaser, striving and achieving. and trying to keep everybody else happy. And even with Got You Back Sister, I love our organisation and I love the women that we help, and that fills my cup more than anything ever has, is actually seeing the transformation of women who have been through the most traumatic thing in their life, being abused, and seeing them, supporting them to get out of that situation and seeing them fly is such a beautiful cup filler. But interestingly, going into my achiever, I'm like, right, is everybody happy? Are the donors happy? Are our supporters happy? Are our corporate supporters happy? Is our staff happy? Are the volunteers happy? And how exhausting that has been. And I'm sure that there's many a woman who's listening to this that can probably relate to that, maybe not in necessarily the same situation, but how we have really succumbed to that being based on what other people want us to be or what we think other people want us to be, because actually sometimes it's more in our head. We think that that's what people want from us, but actually, so it can be a bit in our head. And I remember at the retreat when you talked about that and literally having the breakdown and crying for most of the day because I had that realization. But also I realized that I was there because my soul was calling me to go, actually, it's time. It's time to live differently, to do differently, and to be different. When I say different, I don't mean change a big thing of who I am, but to succumb to that soulful calling. And so the second day of the retreat, you know, there was no more tears that day. It was actually connecting to myself and having beautiful conversations with you, and actually really sitting down and writing and talking about actually what is it that my soul wants. And I realized my soul doesn't really care about the validation or the achieving. My soul doesn't care about that. And so for me, it set me on this whole other part. It actually brought me back to Hey Soul Sista because I hadn't podcasted for a year. And it brought me back to this because I'm like soulful conversations and having beautiful learnings and wisdom shared on Hey Soul Sista. I'm like, I love that. And it's not all about Hey Soul Sista at all, but that day was the thing that cracked me open. You were talking about your experience where your soul was cracked open. That retreat with you and the wonderful women there cracked my soul open. And it set me on this whole other journey path now, a whole other new path. 10 years ago, it was starting Got Your Back Sister and going down that journey. And now I'm like on a whole new path. But I also go, that's the beautiful joy of life, the soulful joy of life. And so, you know, I would recommend anybody to really start to go down that journey, which I'm actually going to give you a quick plug for your next retreat because that is coming up in September. People, if you want to have this experience too, Cathy is running another retreat in September, a soulful retreat.
Want to save your soul? Review us on Apple Podcast.
And so I guess, Cathy, for people that you meet, for women that you meet, and I know that you, through your mentoring and your circles that you have for soulful women, for somebody who is at the beginning of this journey, going from the first phase of life of what the world wants us to be to the second soulful stage of life, what would you say to women to actually get them shifting into that more soulful space if they don't know where to start?
Yeah. Probably my first advice would be to see that this is not something wrong within you that you need to fix. So when things feel like, because often the second stage starts to show up with profound frustration at the first stage. So you've done everything right, I'm not happy, I'm in a funk, and as women particularly, we internalize that. What's wrong with me? And then we try to do what we're currently doing even better. So I'm just going to work even harder or try to be more present, or we try to do this stuff, but it's still within the context of if only I just do more of this better or a little bit different, then I will be happy. Rather than starting to think this isn't even really about me. I'm just wearing a slipper that's too tight for me now, and I need to buy another, get another bigger space to grow into. And I think that can be really helpful. And for me, what guided me, Mel, in making this was when I was was in my late 20s. And look, for a lot of people, it hits in their early 40s. And I still work with some people in their 50s or even early 60s that have resisted the call of the second stage of life. And so they're still just trying to evaluate success in life through external metrics. But eventually, as wonderful as that is, we all like to have external validation. It just stops being fulfilling. So at some point that will stop working for you. For me, it stopped working in my 20s, for others later on, but eventually that will happen. But because the internet hadn't been invented at this point, I didn't have any elders or wise people around me that I knew. So I did go through a process of thinking what's wrong with me and trying to fix myself. And my changed it was that I read a book by Joseph Campbell, who's I think he was even still alive at this point, but he died in his late 80s. He was a very famous mythologist and wrote lots of books. And he was the one who came up with the whole idea of the hero's journey that we've heard so much about. He talked about this sort of dissatisfaction and the life that it's actually calling you to. And then he also said in his book that coming to the end of his life, he realised it kind of all worked out in the end, which sort of had me have more courage, I guess, and he had taken a very unconventional life. He had not done the conventional life, and I was pulled to the unconventional because I looked at the conventional and already I was like, oh, is that it? So the fact that he'd been unconventional and got to the end of his life and said, wow, it all works out, it kind of gave me permission to start exploring more of what I was drawn to rather than what I felt I should be doing. And that got me really involved in the Hunger Project and a couple of other things that were sort of quite fringy at the time. And it also had me have some courage to not just go down the career route that everyone said I should be following because I was smart and I had different experience. You should be in banking, people would say, and you'd be making a fortune. And I was like, yeah, I could and I would, but I just don't want to. But then I felt, then what's wrong with me that I don't want to? Because I didn't have any context around soul or any examples of anyone living a soulful life. And so for people living at home, listening to this, firstly, giving yourself permission that this is really normal. This is your soul's evolution. Our souls want us to grow, our lives to keep expanding. And the box that we're currently constructed for ourselves is it's like a shell of a hermit crab. You're outgrowing it. That's all. Now, it doesn't mean you blow up your life and run off to an ashram or do whatever. And I think that's part of the thing why we often stay with what we've got because we feel like to make the changes to a more soulful life, we're going to have to blow our life up and we don't want to do that. But there are ways that we can consciously start to give space to soul. So if this is you, firstly recognize, actually, this is just part of my soul's evolution. This is fine. I'm not in a position to change my career or do anything, but soul needs time for you to listen to it. So where can you get yourself even 5 minutes with a cup of tea and no one there and just allow yourself to start to dream and to think. Start noticing what dreams, literal dreams you might wake up with. Start to notice what's moving you and just I feel, and I said this on the retreat, Mel, that soul is like this. It's so wanting you to hear it. Your soul is just constantly talking to you. But it's like this mystical unicorn in a forest, and you need to stay still and almost have some beckon it to you, and it will come to you, but it won't come to you if you're just clomping through. Where are you? You need to allow space for it to come to you and welcome it and be a space for it, and then start to play with what things are coming up.
It shows up.
And so for me, writing my book, Unlikely Leaders, I wasn't a writer. That was like a soulful project, and we can create soul work even within our current work. So there's just many ways to integrate soul in a way that supports you.
It's interesting. I know women that I speak to, and they're probably in their, mid to late 40s, early 50s, kind of going either in that second phase of life. I find it interesting that so many women are saying they've discovered nature and they've realized that actually what touches their soul is actually nature, going for a walk, doing the sunrise swims at the beach, hiking. And I know for me we started spending time a couple of years ago up the coast at Dunbogan and spending a lot of time just sitting on the beach. And I know whenever I go there, it's like, and I hadn't experienced that feeling, and I literally can feel my heart glow when I go there, that I call it my soulful space. And I hadn't experienced that before. And that, again, that's been a bit of a life changer for me. And I know when I go there, I cook and create and I don't make time for that at home. And I'm not saying that you have to go somewhere or be somewhere to do that. It's actually, you do that and make time for that at home. But I know for me that has really opened my eyes and opened my heart, is actually going, okay, I need soulful time. I'm going to go and spend time there and with no one else but myself. And I love that something simple like going for a walk through the bush, even that's something simple that anybody can do, to go and get quiet and touch the trees, breathe the air and take time just to be without anybody else. Or you can take a friend, but even just to get quiet and to listen, that's something so simple that anybody can do. And as well, Cathy, I know that you talked at the beginning of this episode, you were talking about that you do a daily practice with meditation. And I know for many people that just sitting and doing a meditation each morning, that is a connection for them too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most people don't meditate, and I don't want meditation then to be an obstacle to soulful life as well. So sometimes, as you said, going for a walk can be simple things like, I love beeswax candles, so just lighting those, just finding ways, even like getting yourself a really lovely teacup. Okay, as you can tell, I do drink tea. Just finding like little ways, but also just whatever you're doing, I just be, rather than what does my soul want, because then it often gets caught up in like purpose. I need to find my purpose, and it gets to be this grasping thing.
There's so much talk
around your fingers. It's like water.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so much talk. I hear that all the time. There's this thing, I need to find my purpose. I need to find my passion. And it's like, oh yeah, it's this graspiness. I hear it a lot. I need to find my purpose and my passion. But actually it's more about getting quiet and listening.
It is. And again, it's this beckoning. So this is soul. Like, what does my soul want from me? And this is why the retreats are so powerful, because it creates an appointment with soul. So rather than this grasping, looking, hunting, kind of desperate need to find it, which soul will always then be elusive. It's this thing of like listening, trusting. I talk to my soul. So I'm like, okay, what's the soulful approach here? And it's like it's more like a two-way, it's a trust, knowing that it will come to me if I create that space for it, rather than this thing that I need to go out for it, like harpooning a whale and then try and kind of bring it back in. Soul doesn't come to you on command, really doesn't. But it's there. It's always there. It's whispering. It comes to you in dreams. If you get moved by something. So that's another way of like listening to your soul. You could be even like watching something on TV that really moves you. Then to me it's like, oh, what was it about that? And not just because it was a sad thing because someone died and you're sort of crying with it, but I get moved by, like, I pay attention to what moves me, Mel. And It's like these are, again, little soul inklings that there's something there for me. There's some juice there for me.
Yeah. Do you know, when we were on the retreat, and I think about this often, you introduced me to Nick Cave, and was it Into My Arms was it Nick Cave? I remember you played, I think we were sitting, that there was one night that we were doing the silent cinema, the silent disco. So we had headphones on and there was music just coming through, and Nick Cave came on and he was singing, and it was this deep, soulful song. And I remember just sitting there in the dark with my silent disco headphones on and hearing this song and feeling so connected. And I remember, I think there were a couple of other songs. Who was it? Was it with Johnny Cash, or there was somebody you were talking about? You were like going, this is a soulful version of a pop song. Do you remember that?
Yeah, like we were talking about just like little examples, and I got this from Frances Weller's work, but so they're like the song One by U2.
Yes.
And which is a song. It's a beautiful song and everything. And then you listen to that same song sung by Johnny Cash months before he died, in his 80s with his croaky. It just has, it's the words are the same, but the soul and the resonance is totally different. And so it was just like a couple of examples of the difference.
And I have since downloaded that song. I've downloaded that song onto my playlist on my phone and have listened to it. And I'm like, I get it. That was a perfect, I guess at the time you explained that to us about going, this is such a soulful song, and really sitting and listening to that and going, yeah, I get that. The difference between two different ways of singing the one song. Yeah. Anyway, I would say if you get a chance, Soul Sisters, go and have a listen to Johnny Cash singing One, and you'll know what we're talking about and feel that beautiful connection. Cool. Well, my friend, thank you so much for coming and sharing that. Again, that retreat and that experience really was a life changer for me. I think about it often, and I go back and read all the notes that I read there when I feel like I might be struggling and getting really caught up in the doing of everyday life and the busyness of life. Because I know when I get in that busyness of life with, charity and home, and now I'm studying at uni and podcasting and socializing, that I realize that it's just exhausting, and I know I'm not stopping and listening to my soul, and I have to stop and go, right, okay, let's be quiet and just be.
Yeah, like so many women who were there have just told me how incredible it was. And in fact, I wasn't even going to hold it this year because I've got all these book launches for another book in that part of the year. But yeah, like I thought, I'm going to have it. And so people listening, it's held in Byron Bay in Hinterland, and it's from the 26th to the 29th of September. And I guess details will be in the show notes underneath, or you can find me at Cathy with a C, Cathy Burke, BURKE.com. Just .com, so cathyburke.com.
Well, thank you so much. You're so generous, Cathy, and with your time and your wisdoms, and I always learn so much from you. So thank you for coming and sharing that with our listeners.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Hey Soul Sista with Mel Histon. What would help you on your crazy life journey? Email Melissa at thesistercode.com.